Alright, so I just got my books back from CGC, and just to let you know, all these books were pressed first. Originally, I was just going to do an unboxing, but once I saw my grades online, I thought it might be good to switch it up and show like a before and after. Some of these books were previously graded, and I cracked them open, had them pressed and regraded, and some were raws. So I figured it might be good to share with you why I chose some of these books and what book would make a good candidate to get pressed and graded. Alright, so let's get started. In this section we have the comics that I actually did good on. Here we have Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, number 134, the first cameo appearance of Darkseid. Now, this book improved a lot grade-wise. It was originally an 8.0. The front cover was in good shape. It was both of the top corners on the back. If you notice, they look like they were kind of pinched. So as you can see, they didn't break color and they pressed out really nice. Here we have an Amazing Spider-Man number 3, the first appearance of Doc Ock, Otto Octavius. Originally, this book was a 5.5, and what made this book a great candidate to have pressed and regraded was the fact that the spine was in really good shape other than the exposure stain on it. Now, if you don't know what an exposure stain is, it occurs when books are stacked and stored for a long period of time. And the piece that is exposed to the air, depending on the environment, will start to build up a black film on that exposed area. Now, one of the things that I learned is that that stain can be easily removed with the dry cleaning chemicals that they use when you send the book to get pressed. Other imperfections in this book were finger dents, and they typically are easily pressed out if they don't break color. Alright, here we have an Amazing Spider-Man 13. This is the first appearance of Mysterio, Quentin Beck. This book was raw. It had a bend on the top left corner on the back of the book that went halfway through the book's pages. The bend was about an inch long from top to the bottom and about 2 inches wide. If the bend would have broken color, like if it would have been a fold or a crease, I would not have sent it. And even when I sent it, I called and made sure that it could be pressed out. Because if not, the book would have came back a 4 or a 5 and it wouldn't have been worth it. So if you're unsure, you can always get the book pre-screened before you actually get it pressed. Here we have an Amazing Spider-Man 14, the first appearance of the Green Goblin, who is also Norman Osborn. So I bought this book raw. It was originally listed on eBay as a VF+, but the seller was asking for way too much money. A lot of times you can work out a direct deal on the higher end comics because nobody wants to pay the eBay fees or the PayPal fees. So by removing those from the equation, you can negotiate the price down and save a lot of money, especially if you are buying the comic as an investment. The only reason I am mentioning this, when the book arrived, it definitely wasn't in VF+ shape. Now, the whole reason to buy a raw book over a graded book is also to save money. And in this case, the shape that it was in and the amount that I paid, I was actually losing money. And there is nothing that I hate more than to buy an overgraded book. So sending it to get pressed actually saved my investment in this case. The Amazing Spider-Man number 15, the first appearance of Kraven the Hunter. Not much to say about this one. Some of these I'll kind of keep short to keep the video moving. Alright, here we have an Amazing Spider-Man number 46, the first appearance of the Shocker, also known as Herman Schultz. Now this book I never intended on getting graded. I never thought it was in good enough shape. But since he was cast in the new Spider-Man Homecoming movie, I figured why not get it pressed and have it graded. And I actually was pleasantly shocked, no pun intended, that it came back in 8.5. Alright, so here we have an Amazing Spider-Man 300, the first appearance of Venom, also known as Eddie Brock. When I first had this book graded, it came back in 9.4. It was a huge disappointment because I thought this book was dead mint. All 4 corners were sharp, the spine was perfect. I was baffled. I did not understand why this book came back in 9.4. I mean, I just chalked it up to they're obviously seeing something that I'm not. And at this point, I guess I'm just never going to receive a 9.8 by sending in a raw book. So I actually stopped sending in books to get graded for a little while. Until I learned the trick of looking at the books in a dark room. Now, if you take away anything from this video, this would be it. So I'm not talking about a dark room for developing film. I'm talking about blacking out a room in your house and just letting a sliver of sunlight poke through. Then you get the book, you angle it in the light, and you go over it, front, back, spine, everything. And you will be amazed at how clear every little defect in the book will just pop right out. And I will show you later on how a book looks in this light. I'm just saving that for the mistakes section. So once I saw the book in the dark room, I saw the light wrinkles and the finger dents, and I guess that is enough to bring it down to a 9.4. But thankfully none of them broke color, and when I sent the book in to have it pressed and cleaned, it came back a 9.8, so never give up. All right, so here we have New Gods number 7, the first appearance of Steppenwolf. Now, I'm a pretty big New Gods fan, and I'm pretty excited to see a book from this series start to heat up. I never thought in a million years that Steppenwolf would become any kind of big character in the DC universe. Actually, the big reveal, or the significant part of this story, was the fact that Highfather and Darkseid swapped children in a peace treaty. All right, here we have a Marvel Spotlight number 5. The first appearance of Ghost Rider, also known as Johnny Blaze. Not much to say about this book. I was pretty happy that it came back in 9.2. I guess I can just tell you something about the book. Johnny Blaze was like an Evel Knievel who made a deal with the devil to save the man that raised him from dying of cancer. All right, so moving on, here we have Doom Patrol number 99, the first appearance of Beast Boy. And here we have a My Greatest Adventure number 80, which happens to be the first appearance of the Doom Patrol. All right, here's a Flash 106, the first appearance of Gorilla Grodd. Believe it or not, this book is actually pretty hard to find in a high grade. Before I sent this book off to get pressed, I would have given it a grade of about a VG+. So I'm actually pretty pleased that it came back as 6.0. Werewolf by Night number 32, the first appearance of Moon Knight, also known as Mark Spector. This particular book was in great shape, other than the fact that it had a spine roll and some very light spine stress, which pressed out really nice. I'm pretty pumped because now I have two 9.6 copies. Okay, so this Amazing Spider-Man 121 was a big turning point. And what I mean by that, at this point, I was just going through my collection, picking out what I thought were the best books to get graded, only to have them come back with a much lower grade than what I thought or what I expected. And that can be pretty disheartening, especially when you're shelling out that kind of money to have the book graded, only to have it come back and have it be worth less than when you sent it. Anyway, getting back to this book, I thought it was mint. It did have a subscription roll in it, but it didn't break color. So I thought they would still give it a decently high grade. Well, I was wrong. The book came back as 6.5, but I didn't want to give up on this book. I started looking at what can I do to fix this. I heard about pressing, but I didn't understand how it affected the integrity of the book. Was it considered restoration? Is it something you can do yourself? Can you like stack a bunch of books on the comic? So I started doing research, reading some CGC blogs, because if this is something you can do yourself, I wanted to figure it out and try to do it. But once I saw that there's a little more involved in pressing a comic book, I decided to just send it off and see what happens. Well, I had great results. It came back in 9.2. So now I'm thinking I just discovered the wheel. You can crack open any previously graded book that hadn't been pressed, send it in to get pressed and regraded, and the grade would improve. Well, let me tell you, that's not the case either. Some of them actually came back a lower grade. In this section is a compilation of all the mistakes that I've made. Now here's the Moon Knight number 1, the Bill Sienkiewicz variant. Now if you're a Moon Knight fan, you know this is a very rare comic because of the low print run. Now I've been looking for a high grade of this issue for a while. So these pictures that you see were from eBay. These pictures look mint, they look great. The seller claimed that the comic had never been read, never been opened, the seal had never been broken from when he bought it back in 2014. So of course he graded this a near mint 9.8. So I bought the comic. When it arrived, I looked at it in the darkroom, and you can see the pictures. It is far from a 9.8. It's more like a 9.2, 9.4 if I'm lucky. Now, I didn't hold it against him because I believe that he believed it was a 9.8. He probably didn't know better. Like he said, he never took it out, so he probably assumed if you don't touch a comic and you buy it brand new that it's automatically a 9.8. So I contacted him right away, showed him the pictures in the light, and basically said that either we work out some kind of partial refund that is appropriate to the grade, or I'll just send the comic back because I wasn't going to get burned. So you be the judge. Look at the original pictures and look at how it looks in the darkroom in the beam of light. So pressing saved this book from coming back a 9.2 or 9.4. Of course I wanted a 9.8, but because this comic is rare, I am okay with a 9.6. So here we have a giant size X-Men #1. Now this was a huge mistake, a huge blunder that I made. I didn't account for the small water stain in the top right corner, and on the back there was a crease that didn't break color, which is why I thought this would be a great candidate. But what I couldn't see, the clear bracket that holds the comic in the well dug in to the lower part of the comic and left a mark. So at this point I was sending the comics to CBCS, and I sent the comic in and it came back a 7.0 with a check mark. The check mark says that, hey, this comic looks better than it's graded. Now, who wants that? Who wants a lower grade with a check mark that says, hey, this comic looks better than it's graded? So this was the point that I stopped sending comics to CBCS. Now, I didn't blame them for the lower grade because, hey, if the inner well dug into the book and left a mark and pressing the book can't take the mark out, then it's kind of my fault. So I kind of took responsibility, learned a valuable lesson that I should probably do a little more homework, a little more research before I just pick any book to send and have pressed and regraded. But the check mark really burned me. And after that, I stopped sending books to CBCS and went back to CGC. All right, so here's an Amazing Spider-Man Annual 1, the first appearance of the Sinister Six. Now, I had this book pressed, sent it to CBCS, and it came back in 8.5. So when I started converting my books that I sent to CBCS to CGC, this book came back in 8.0. And it wasn't the only one. Here's a Rifleman issue #10, classic Chuck Connors cover. This was a CBCS 6.5, and when I had it switched, it came back a CGC 6.0. Now, this wasn't such a huge loss on this particular book, but the Amazing Spider-Man Annual 1, going from 8.5 to 8.0, that is a pretty big loss. So the myth is that if you buy an older red label or blue label book and resubmit them, you'll get a higher grade. Now, I've actually had the opposite results. Now let me explain. I've bought some older red label books, some older blue label books, cracked them open, had them pressed, resubmitted them, and they came back a lower grade. So I learned the hard way, water stains and foxing don't come out with the dry cleaning chemicals that they use when you get your book pressed. Which is why when I resubmitted those books, they came back a lower grade. On this particular book, it had an exposure stain on the bottom right corner, which as you can see was easily removed. And on the back cover towards the bottom in the middle, there was kind of a wrinkly crease, which was easily pressed out, and it still came back a 6.5. One thing I can say about the older label books is that they are less likely to be pressed. So because of that, I still try, but I definitely know there's no guarantees. Okay, here we have a Marvel Preview #7, the first appearance of Rocket Raccoon. Now this is where I preach patience. Now, even I get tired of waiting for the book to be pressed, waiting for the book to be graded. I mean, depending on the tier or what convention is going on at the time, this whole process could take around 6 months. Well, my mistake on this book is I didn't wait. I skipped the pressing process and just sent it right to CGC. Well, I didn't know how detrimental fingerprints were to a grade. I expected this book at least to come back a 9.6. So when it came back in 9.4, I was left with the option of do I crack it back open and resubmit it and try to have the fingerprints removed, or do I keep the 9.4? Well, this is the other problem that I have. I get so caught up in receiving a certain grade that I just wind up selling the book, and I regret it now. These next group of books I'll run through really quickly. Some of them I do have a before picture, and I'll show that. Here we have a Marvel Preview #4, the first appearance of Star-Lord. This book I do have a before picture. The spine was great and the corners were all sharp, but after my blunder with the Marvel Preview #7, I still had it pressed anyways. Fantastic Four number 48, the first full appearance of the Silver Surfer, and the first cameo from Galactus, also known as the Eater of Worlds. Alright, here we have a Fantastic Four number 49, the first full appearance of Galactus. Doctor Strange 169, his first title series. Here is Star Wars issue number 1. Alright, here we have an Omega Men number 3, the first appearance of Lobo. This book was all in all in good shape. It had a spine roll, which pressed out really nice. Here we have an Avengers 196, the first appearance of Taskmaster. Now here's a little fun fact. This is actually one of the most pressed books from the last couple years. Alright, here we have a pretty rare gold edition of Gambit's first issue. Here's a New Mutants 26, the first appearance of Legion. And I think we'll end on the X-Men 221, the first appearance of Mr. Sinister. Wow, you made it to the end. Well, I hope this means you liked the video. So share it and thanks for watching.